What if the most demonized figure in history holds a key to spiritual enlightenment? Baphomet, the symbol of evil, is also a symbol of balance and enlightenment. The true history of Baphomet has been deliberately suppressed by religious and societal powers. More than just a demonic figure, Baphomet is a complex symbol with roots stretching back into ancient paganism, winding through medieval occultism, and resurfacing in modern spirituality. The demonization of Baphomet is a long and twisted tale, forever intertwined with the trials of the Knights Templar and subsequent interpretations crafted by those who sought to condemn them. But Baphomet's relevance extends far beyond historical accusations, resonating within contemporary spiritual and philosophical discussions, hinting at a continuing influence that many would prefer to keep hidden. Prepare to uncover the hidden history of Baphomet, revealing its surprising connections to ancient deities and esoteric traditions, some predating Christianity itself. We will explore Baphomet's intricate symbolism, explaining how its radical integration of seemingly irreconcilable opposites can lead to profound spiritual growth and a deeper understanding of the self. And we will hint at the shocking truth behind Baphomet's deliberate misrepresentation, exposing the political and religious agendas that fueled its demonization for centuries, agendas that persist to this day. The video's core argument is this: Baphomet's demonization is a deliberate distortion of a complex symbol representing spiritual balance and forbidden knowledge, revealing far more about the motivations and prejudices of the accusers than the true nature of the accused. Understanding Baphomet's true origins and multifaceted symbolism challenges traditional power structures, invites radical self-inquiry, and ultimately opens the door to a more holistic and integrated understanding of spirituality. We acknowledge the common perception of Baphomet as a symbol of evil and Satanism, a figure to be feared and reviled, but invite you to question this deeply ingrained narrative. This topic connects directly to the broader, often unsettling theme of historical misrepresentation and the systematic suppression of alternative beliefs, especially those that challenge established religious or political doctrines. Understanding Baphomet, then, can help us understand the power of symbols, the insidious nature of propaganda, and the paramount importance of critical thinking in navigating a world saturated with misinformation and manipulated narratives. Let's begin by exploring the ancient roots of Baphomet's symbolism, tracing its evolution from horned pagan deities to the cryptic imagery found within medieval grimoires. To truly understand the demonization of Baphomet, we must first delve into the ancient roots of its imagery, roots that long predate Christianity and lie deep within the earth of forgotten pagan traditions. This is a journey that will unearth surprising connections between Baphomet and deities associated with nature's raw power, the intoxicating dance of fertility, and the inevitable, cyclical aspects of life and death aspects that organized religion often seeks to suppress or control. What dark secrets do these connections reveal about the origins of Baphomet's enduring symbolism? Historically, many ancient cultures revered deities with animalistic features, often attributing to them powers that transcended the human realm. From the sun-drenched Mediterranean to the misty forests of northern Europe, horned gods and animal-headed figures were commonplace, embodying the untamed forces of nature, the fertility of the land, and the mysteries of the cosmos. These weren't merely monstrous figures to be feared. Instead, they were often seen as beneficent protectors, providers of abundance, and guides to the hidden realms of existence. Christianity, however, viewed these figures as rivals, as remnants of a bygone era that threatened its burgeoning dominance. Syncretism, in this context, refers to the merging and assimilation of different religious beliefs and mythologies. As cultures interacted, their deities and symbolic systems often intertwined, giving rise to composite figures that blended attributes from multiple traditions. Therefore, Baphomet can be seen as a product of this syncretic process, a symbol that potentially draws inspiration from a variety of earlier pagan sources, consciously or unconsciously absorbing their symbolic weight. But what if the deliberate construction of the Baphomet myth relied on the pre-existing negative associations formed through centuries of demonizing pagan deities? For example, the Greek god Pan, a figure instantly recognizable by his goat legs and horns, was associated with sexuality, wildness, music, and ecstatic states. He roamed the forests and mountains, embodying the untamed spirit of nature and inspiring both joy and terror in those who encountered him. His image, once a symbol of vitality and freedom, would later be twisted by Christian theologians into a representation of the devil himself. Another relevant deity is Cernunnos, the Celtic horned god, whose antlers symbolized his connection to the forest, animals, hunting, and prosperity. Often depicted wearing a torque, a symbol of power and wealth, Cernunnos represented the abundance of the natural world and the cyclical rhythms of life. And what of the Egyptian god Bamjedit, the goat of Mendes, associated with fertility and royal power? This demonization served to suppress indigenous beliefs and consolidate religious authority. By associating horns and animalistic features with evil, Christianity effectively delegitimized the pagan traditions that had revered these symbols for centuries. Therefore, the horns and animalistic features, once potent symbols of nature's power and fertility, became stigmatized as emblems of wickedness, forever linked to the forces of darkness. The suppression of paganism led to the stigmatization of nature, sexuality, and other aspects of life celebrated by pre-Christian cultures. What was once sacred became profane, and what was once revered became reviled. This leads us to the next stage in Baphomet's historical trajectory, its connection to the Knights Templar and the accusations of heresy that ultimately led to their downfall. But how did these ancient pagan symbols and the accusations of pagan worship become associated with a medieval Christian military order? Did the Templars, during their time in the Holy Land, encounter esoteric traditions and forbidden knowledge that challenged their orthodox beliefs, leading them to incorporate pagan symbolism into their practices, or was this merely a fabrication of their accusers? However, it's important to note that the direct, unbroken lineage between specific pagan deities and Baphomet is a matter of ongoing debate among scholars. Alternative theories suggest that the name Baphomet may derive from Mahomet, a medieval corruption of the name Mohammed, used to demonize Muslims during the Crusades. It is also possible that the accusations against the Templars were primarily politically motivated, a means for King Philip IV of France to seize their wealth and power, regardless of the actual origins of the Baphomet figure. But are these competing theories mutually exclusive, or do they represent different facets of a complex historical phenomenon? Despite these alternative theories, the significance of pagan influences on Baphomet's imagery cannot be entirely dismissed. Ultimately, the demonization of Baphomet drew upon pre-existing cultural associations between paganism and evil, associations that had been carefully cultivated by the Church for centuries. Understanding these pagan roots is essential for deconstructing the biased and historically inaccurate portrayal of Baphomet that continues to this day. Understanding these roots is the first step to understanding its use by the Knights Templar. But what exactly did the Templars know, and what role did Baphomet play in their secretive rituals? Building upon the pagan roots of Baphomet, we now arrive at perhaps its most infamous association, the Knights Templar. This brings us to the crucial question: were the Knights Templar truly heretics who worshipped a pagan idol named Baphomet, or were they victims of a politically motivated smear campaign that forever altered the course of history? The answer, as we will discover, is shrouded in mystery and intrigue, a tale of power, betrayal, and the suppression of forbidden knowledge. To understand the accusations against the Templars, we must first understand the Knights Templar themselves. Founded in the aftermath of the First Crusade in 1119, the Knights Templar were a Catholic military order charged with protecting Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. Over time, they evolved into a powerful and wealthy organization, establishing a vast network of banks, castles, and lands throughout Europe and the Middle East. Their military prowess, coupled with their vast financial resources, made them a force to be reckoned with, a power that rivaled even that of kings. But this very power would ultimately lead to their downfall, making them targets of envy and suspicion. How could a religious order accumulate so much wealth and influence, and what secrets did they guard? The seeds of the Templars' destruction were sown in the early 14th century when King Philip IV of France, deeply in debt to the order and eager to consolidate his power, launched a campaign to discredit and dismantle the Knights Templar. He pressured Pope Clement V to launch an investigation into the Templars, accusing them of heresy, blasphemy, and immoral practices. On Friday, October 13, 1307, a date forever etched in infamy, hundreds of Templars were arrested throughout France, marking the beginning of a brutal and systematic persecution. This was followed by years of trials, confessions extracted through torture, and executions that decimated the ranks of the once mighty order. But what were the specific charges against the Templars, and how did the mysterious figure of Baphomet enter the picture? Among the numerous accusations leveled against the Templars, several pertained directly to Baphomet. Templars were accused of denying Christ, spitting on the cross during initiation ceremonies, and engaging in the worship of idols, specifically one known as Baphomet. The name itself appears in various spellings in the trial records: Baphomet, Baphomet, Baphomets, reflecting the uncertainty surrounding its origins and meaning. Some scholars have suggested that Baphomet was a corruption of Mahomet, the medieval name for Mohammed, while others believe it derived from a more obscure pagan source. Regardless of its etymology, the Templars were accused of venerating this figure in secret rituals that defied Christian orthodoxy and threatened the authority of the Church. But what did these rituals entail, and what form did Baphomet supposedly take? The trial records paint a disturbing picture of these alleged rituals. Templars were said to have kissed the idol's posterior, worshipped its head, and engaged in other acts of sacrilege. Descriptions of Baphomet varied wildly, ranging from a head with multiple faces to a bearded figure or a strange human-animal hybrid. Some confessions described Baphomet as a cat, while others depicted it as a head with 3 faces. One Templar under torture confessed to worshipping a cat, then a head, and then an idol made in the figure of a man. These inconsistencies and bizarre descriptions raise serious questions about the reliability of the confessions and the true nature of the Templars' practices. Consider the testimony of Jean de Chalon, a Templar knight who confessed under torture to denying Christ and spitting on the cross. He also claimed that he had seen an idol in the chapter meeting, made of wood, painted, having a terrible face, and that he was told to worship it. Another Templar, Geoffrey de Gonville, testified that he had seen a figure of a man with a great beard that was venerated by the order. However, these confessions were often obtained after prolonged periods of torture, leading many historians to question their veracity. As the Malleus Maleficarum states, torture can extract any confession, true or false, from the accused. Were these Templars confessing to actual practices, or were they simply telling their tormentors what they wanted to hear? Analyzing the evidence, we must consider the possibility that the Templars' confessions were coerced through torture, misinterpretations of their actual practices, or even deliberate fabrications by their accusers. It's possible that the Baphomet figure was a symbolic representation of wisdom, a code name for a secret teaching, or a distorted version of Islamic beliefs encountered by the Templars during their time in the Holy Land. Some scholars even suggest that the Templars were involved in unorthodox or esoteric practices, but that these were not necessarily heretical in nature. But what if the accusations against the Templars were not about religious heresy at all, but rather about political power and financial gain, the political motivations behind the accusations cannot be ignored. King Philip IV was deeply in debt to the Templars, and their vast wealth posed a significant threat to his authority. By accusing them of heresy, Philip was able to seize their assets, eliminate a powerful rival, and consolidate his own power. Therefore, the Baphomet accusations may have been nothing more than a pretext, a convenient excuse to justify the king's actions. This leads to a disturbing conclusion, that the Templars were not heretics, but rather victims of a ruthless power grab that exploited religious fears and prejudices. But what if there was a deeper agenda at play? While the extent of the Templars' actual worship of Baphomet remains a topic of debate, it is undeniable that the Templar trials and the Baphomet figure became potent symbols of religious persecution, political intrigue, and the suppression of forbidden knowledge. Alternative theories suggest that the name Baphomet may have derived from Mahomet, Mohammed, or other linguistic sources, further complicating the picture. Whatever the truth, the Templar trials cemented Baphomet's place in the Western imagination as a symbol of heresy and forbidden knowledge. Despite these nuances and counterarguments, the historical connection between the Knights Templar and the Baphomet accusations, even if based on coerced confessions and political machinations, established a dark legacy. The Baphomet narrative became a symbol of suppressed esoteric knowledge and religious persecution. Now it is time to fast forward to the 19th century, where a French occultist named Eliphas Levi would take the fragmented clues of history and transform Baphomet into an icon. But how did Levi, a relatively obscure figure, manage to create the image that would forever define Baphomet in the modern imagination? And why has this image resonated so powerfully across occult and esoteric traditions? Building upon the dark legacy of the Knights Templar and the accusations surrounding Baphomet, we now enter the 19th century, a period of immense social and intellectual change, where occultism experienced a significant revival. It is here that Eliphas Levi, a French occultist, emerges as a key figure, transforming the vague historical Baphomet into a defined, symbolic figure that continues to resonate within modern occultism and popular culture. But how did Levi, a man of the cloth turned esoteric scholar, craft an image that would forever alter the perception of Baphomet? And why does this image continue to hold such power? To truly understand Levi's Baphomet, we must first understand Eliphas Levi himself. Born Alphonse Louis Constant in 1810, Levi was a former Catholic priest who abandoned the church to pursue his deep fascination with occultism, magic, and esoteric philosophy. He immersed himself in the study of ancient texts, Kabbalah, and Hermeticism, becoming a prominent figure in the 19th century occult revival, a period marked by a renewed interest in spiritualism, ancient mysteries, and esoteric societies. This era witnessed a widespread questioning of traditional religious and scientific doctrines, as individuals sought alternative explanations for the mysteries of existence. Spiritualism, with its seances and claims of communicating with the dead, gained immense popularity, while secret societies like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn attracted intellectuals and artists seeking hidden knowledge and spiritual enlightenment. Levi, influenced by these movements, sought to synthesize various esoteric traditions into a coherent system, a system that would ultimately give birth to his iconic Baphomet. Levi's key influences stemmed from a diverse range of esoteric traditions. Hermeticism, with its emphasis on the interconnectedness of all things and the principle of as above, so below, provided a framework for understanding the universe as a unified whole. Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical tradition, offered a complex system of symbolism and numerology that Levi integrated into his magical practices and interpretations. He drew heavily from ancient pagan traditions, Rosicrucianism, alchemy, and various other esoteric currents, weaving them together into a tapestry of occult philosophy. This blend of influences is crucial to understanding Levi's Baphomet, a figure that embodies the synthesis of seemingly disparate elements. Levi's depiction of Baphomet is found in his influential book, Dogmi et Ritual de la Haute Magie, Transcendental Magic, its Doctrine and Ritual, published in 1855. Within its pages lies an image that has become synonymous with the name Baphomet. The image portrays an androgynous figure with the head of a goat, sitting in a meditative pose. This is not merely a monstrous depiction, but a carefully constructed symbol laden with esoteric meaning. The figure possesses both male and female characteristics, representing the union of opposites, while the goat head, often associated with Pan or the sabbatic goat, symbolizes primal energy and the creative force of nature. Wings adorn its back, signifying spiritual aspiration and the ability to transcend the material realm. The key elements of Levi's Baphomet are rich with symbolic meaning. A torch blazes between its horns, representing intelligence and the illuminating power of gnosis. A pentagram is inscribed on its forehead, a symbol of microcosm and the dominion of intellect over the elements. The caduceus, a symbol of healing and balance, replaces its genitals, further emphasizing the reconciliation of opposites. The inscriptions Salve and Coagula are written on its arms, representing the alchemical process of dissolving and reforming, a metaphor for spiritual transformation. All of these elements, when combined, paint a picture of Baphomet as a complex and multifaceted symbol, embodying the synthesis of seemingly contradictory forces. Consider the androgynous nature of the figure, representing the alchemical marriage of male and female principles. The right arm is masculine and points upwards to the white moon, while the left arm is feminine and points downwards to the black moon, symbolizing mercy and justice, activity and passivity. The two breasts show the figure's maternal nature, but its masculine legs are covered with the scales of the caduceus, symbolizing the hermetic principle of duality. Levi himself described Baphomet as the great magical agent, and the absolute in the relative, and the relative in the absolute, further emphasizing its role as a symbol of cosmic unity. This careful construction is not random, but a deliberate attempt to convey profound esoteric truths through visual language. Furthermore, the Salve et Coagula inscription, derived from alchemical tradition, reflects the essential process of spiritual transformation. Salve, meaning to dissolve, represents the breaking down of old structures, beliefs, and patterns that no longer serve us. Coagula, meaning to coagulate, signifies the rebuilding of a new, more integrated and authentic self. Together, these words encapsulate the alchemical journey of death and rebirth, a process of dissolving the old and coagulating the new. This transformation is not merely a mental exercise, but a profound spiritual process that involves confronting our shadows, embracing our complexities, and ultimately achieving a state of wholeness. Levi's Baphomet quickly became a powerful symbol for occultists seeking to challenge traditional religious authority and explore alternative spiritual paths. It represented a rejection of dogma and a celebration of individual experience. It symbolized the pursuit of forbidden knowledge, the reconciliation of seemingly contradictory forces, and the potential for spiritual transformation. However, what would happen when this carefully constructed symbol fell into the hands of Aleister Crowley, a man known for his radical ideas and his embrace of sexual magic? But where did Levi get his inspiration from? Some scholars suggest that Levi drew inspiration from earlier depictions of the sabbatic goat, a horned deity associated with witchcraft and pagan rituals. Others argue that he was influenced by depictions of ancient pagan gods like Pan or Cernunnos, both of whom were associated with nature, fertility, and the wild, untamed aspects of human nature. He could have found inspiration in the ancient Egyptian god Bamjedit, a ram-headed deity. Regardless of the specific sources, Levi synthesized these various influences into a unique and powerful symbol, one that continues to fascinate and inspire occultists to this day. This fusion of images created an evocative, memorable, and ultimately potent symbol. Looking at this image now, the lingering question remains: is Levi's Baphomet a genuine representation of ancient esoteric knowledge, or a carefully constructed symbol designed to challenge religious norms and promote a specific occult agenda? To truly understand the image, you must consider that he synthesized various esoteric traditions, blending elements of paganism, Christianity, and occultism, each element carefully chosen for its symbolic significance. The importance of balance is a core tenet throughout Baphomet's imagery. However, Levi's interpretation of Baphomet has not been without its critics. Some scholars argue that his eclecticism and embrace of multiple traditions represent a misunderstanding or misrepresentation of historical sources. Others suggest that his Baphomet image reflects his personal biases and the cultural context of 19th century France, a period marked by both religious conservatism and a fascination with the occult. While the historical accuracy of Levi's claims is often debated, his impact on the modern image of Baphomet is undeniable. Despite these counterarguments and nuances, Levi's role in shaping the modern image of Baphomet and popularizing it within occult circles remains crucial. Levi's Baphomet became a powerful symbol of spiritual balance, esoteric knowledge, and the reconciliation of opposites, and serves as a rejection of traditional religious authority. Understanding Levi's historical and philosophical context is essential when interpreting the contemporary symbolism of Baphomet, as it provides a key to unlocking the image's complex and multifaceted meanings. As we transition into the 20th century, we must ask, how did Aleister Crowley, the notorious British occultist and founder of the Lemma, incorporate Baphomet into his system of beliefs, and how did he further develop its symbolism, shifting away from Levi's synthesis and into a more sexually charged, individualistic interpretation? We will find that Crowley's unique take on Baphomet would further solidify its place within modern occultism, but in ways that even Levi could not have imagined. Building upon Levi's influential depiction of Baphomet as a symbol of balance and esoteric knowledge, we now turn to the 20th century and the figure of Aleister Crowley. However, this symbol took a darker, more individualistic turn under the influence of the self-proclaimed Great Beast 666, a man whose name remains synonymous with controversy and whose ideas challenged the very foundations of traditional morality. How did Crowley, a master of occultism and self-promotion, seize upon Levi's Baphomet and transform it into a central symbol of his own unique and often misunderstood magical system? To understand Crowley's Thelemic interpretation of Baphomet, we must first delve into the life and philosophy of Aleister Crowley himself. Born Edward Alexander Crowley in 1875, he quickly shed his strict religious upbringing and immersed himself in the study of occultism, joining the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a prominent magical society, before eventually forging his own path. The Lemma, at its core, is a spiritual philosophy centered around the law of the Lemma, expressed as, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." This law emphasizes the importance of discovering and pursuing one's true will, a concept representing the individual's unique purpose and path in life, free from the constraints of societal norms and religious dogma. Crowley's relentless pursuit of his true will lead him to explore various magical traditions, including ceremonial magic, yoga, and Eastern mysticism, ultimately leading to his development of a unique system of sexual magic within the Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO. Crowley's association with the Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO, marked a pivotal moment in his occult career and the evolution of Baphomet symbolism. The OTO, an international fraternal and magical organization, practiced a system of sexual magic, which Crowley embraced and further developed. Within this context, Baphomet ceased to be merely a symbol of balance, becoming a potent representation of the divine and generative power of the sexual act. The integration of Baphomet into Crowley's sexual magic system elevated the symbol to new heights of controversy, solidifying its association with rebellion against traditional religious and social norms. But how did Crowley specifically define Baphomet within this framework, and what role did it play in his magical practices? For Crowley, Baphomet represented the androgynous union of opposites, the alchemical marriage of male and female principles, not just as a philosophical concept, but as a dynamic force that could be harnessed through ritual. This concept went beyond Levi's representation of balance to symbolize a source of immense power. Crowley viewed Baphomet as the child of the union of Shiva and Shakti, the Hindu deities representing masculine and feminine energy, respectively. This child, Baphomet, represented the manifestation of divine will in the material world, the embodiment of the great work, the ultimate goal of the Thelemic magician. Furthermore, Crowley utilized gematria, a Kabbalistic system of numerology, to connect Baphomet to other key concepts within the lemma. In Crowley's numerological system, Baphomet is linked to the number 156, which is associated with Babalon, the Thelemic goddess of feminine power and liberation. This connection highlights the importance of the feminine principle in Crowley's system and its integration with the masculine principle represented by Baphomet. The word chaos is also linked to Baphomet through gematria, representing the primordial state of undifferentiated potential from which all things arise. Crowley's Baphomet, therefore, embodies both the structured and chaotic forces that drive creation and transformation. But where can we find direct evidence of Crowley's specific interpretation and use of Baphomet? In his writings, such as Magic, Book 4, and De Arte Magica, Crowley explicitly details his views on Baphomet and its role in sexual magic. He described Baphomet as a hieroglyph of arcane perfection, representing the union of all opposites and the attainment of spiritual enlightenment through the embrace of both light and darkness. For example, in OTO rituals and initiations, Baphomet serves as a central figure, symbolizing the divine power inherent in the sexual act. Initiates engage in symbolic actions and recitations designed to invoke Baphomet's energy and awaken their own spiritual potential. Crowley's artwork and illustrations also depict Baphomet in unique and revealing ways, highlighting its androgynous nature and its connection to the forces of creation and destruction. Consider also Crowley's Gnostic Mass, a central ritual within the lemma, allegorically represents these key Thelemic concepts with androgynous symbolism. This incorporation of the androgynous, as well as its connection to sex, was very deliberate. Crowley's Baphomet can be interpreted as a symbol of spiritual rebellion against traditional religious and social norms, challenging conventional notions of morality and embracing individual freedom and self-expression. The integration of sexual magic further amplifies this rebellious aspect, as it directly confronts the restrictive and often negative attitudes towards sexuality prevalent in Western society. Crowley's Baphomet represents the individual's pursuit of their true will through the embrace of both light and darkness, the integration of seemingly contradictory aspects of the self, and the unleashing of their full potential. Crowley's philosophy, of course, was and remains controversial, bringing intense criticism. This paved the way for the adoption of Baphomet by Anton LaVey. But what happened when Baphomet entered into the world of modern Satanism, particularly within the Church of Satan and later the Temple of Satan? How did Anton LaVey and other modern Satanists adopt and reinterpret Baphomet as a central symbol of their anti-Christian beliefs, further solidifying its association with rebellion and defiance of traditional morality? The image of Baphomet, now divorced from its more nuanced esoteric roots, was about to undergo yet another transformation, one that would cement its place as a symbol of outright defiance. However, it's important to note that Crowley's interpretation of Baphomet is not universally accepted. even within occult circles. Some scholars argue that his emphasis on sexual magic was metaphorical or symbolic rather than literal, representing the union of inner forces rather than actual sexual acts. Critics argue that Crowley's work is often self-aggrandizing and unreliable, questioning the accuracy of his claims and the sincerity of his beliefs. It is also vital to acknowledge the harm and damage Crowley's teachings have caused some individuals and groups. Despite his intellectual influence, it is clear that many people have been genuinely hurt by his actions and philosophies. Despite these criticisms, Crowley's significant role in shaping the modern understanding and symbolism of Baphomet cannot be denied. Ultimately, Crowley's Baphomet became a powerful symbol of individual liberation, spiritual rebellion, and the integration of opposites, a force that continues to resonate within contemporary occultism and popular culture. Understanding Crowley's thelemic context is essential when interpreting the contemporary symbolism of Baphomet, especially in relation to modern Satanism, as his influence permeates much of the symbolism we see today. But we're just scratching the surface of Baphomet's journey. What we'll discover next about Baphomet and its place in modern Satanism is even more shocking. In conclusion, our exploration into the history of Baphomet reveals a figure far more nuanced than its demonic reputation suggests, and a journey far more complex than a simple story of good versus evil. From ancient pagan roots to modern interpretations, Baphomet's journey reflects humanity's complex relationship with symbolism, power, and the unknown, forcing us to constantly question our perceptions. How much of what we think we know about Baphomet is truth, and how much is carefully constructed narrative? Baphomet's demonization, we've seen, is a product of historical misrepresentation and religious agendas, obscuring its deeper significance as a symbol of balance and integration, and as a focal point for humanity's shadow self. We trace the roots of Baphomet's imagery to horned deities in various pagan traditions, revealing connections to nature, fertility, and the cyclical aspects of life and death. We examine the Knights Templar trials and the accusations of Baphomet worship, highlighting the political motivations and inconsistencies in the evidence, suggesting a calculated smear campaign rather than genuine heresy. We explored Levi's iconic depiction of Baphomet, revealing its symbolism of androgyny, equilibrium, and the reconciliation of opposites. We investigated Aleister Crowley's thelemic interpretation of Baphomet, emphasizing its role in sexual magic and the pursuit of individual spiritual liberation. Finally, we discussed the use of Baphomet in modern Satanism as a symbol of rebellion and defiance of traditional morality. Each phase reveals how Baphomet's image was molded to serve varying agendas, usually misrepresenting or twisting the initial symbolism, a narrative constantly being rewritten. Baphomet's story highlights the dangers of suppressing alternative beliefs and the importance of critical thinking in interpreting historical narratives, even those passed down through generations. It illustrates the power of symbols to be manipulated and distorted, influencing perceptions and shaping societal attitudes, revealing that even the most recognizable images can be tools for control. The enduring appeal of Baphomet as a symbol of the union of opposites underscores the human desire for wholeness and integration, a search for balance in a world often defined by division. How should we approach figures that embody historically negative stereotypes? How do we reclaim symbols from the forces that seek to control them, and can we truly separate the symbol from its historical baggage? In a time of increasing polarization, Baphomet's message of balance is needed more than ever, but are we ready to embrace a symbol so steeped in controversy? Despite its demonized image, Baphomet offers an opportunity to explore the shadow self and integrate opposing forces for personal growth, to confront the aspects of ourselves we've been conditioned to suppress. Consider the symbolism of Baphomet in your own life. How can you embrace the parts of yourself that you've been taught to fear or reject? Baphomet's true legacy lies not in darkness, but in the pursuit of balance, knowledge, and the courage to challenge conventional narratives, a reminder that true understanding requires us to confront the uncomfortable truths within ourselves and the world around us, bringing us back to where we started. If you found this exploration of Baphomet's history and symbolism insightful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Join our community of truth seekers as we continue to uncover hidden knowledge and explore the mysteries of the occult. In our next video, we'll be delving into another misunderstood figure from history, so stay tuned. By subscribing, you'll gain access to thought-provoking content that challenges conventional thinking and expands your understanding of the world, becoming part of a community that dares to question everything. Keep exploring, and remember, the greatest mysteries often lie just beyond the boundaries of what we think we know.